War, Trump revokes. Canada's invite to Board of Peace as EU allies decline joining. Greenland update. You're standing at the edge of a vast, uncharted sea. The winds are howling, and you can feel the weight of history pressing down on you. The world around you is shifting, changing, and with every passing day, it feels like we're on the brink of something monumental. The very ground beneath us is trembling, not just from the chaos of the moment, but from the storm that's coming. A shield, a dome of protection unlike anything we've ever seen before, rising up to defend not just a nation, but the very ideals of freedom and justice that we hold so dear. This isn't just about security, this is about survival, about protecting everything we've worked for. A golden dome designed to defend against the unseen threats in the sky. An unshakable force built with the latest technology, poised to protect not just the United States, but our allies, our values, and our way of life. The very nations we've trusted, some of the closest allies we've had for decades, are suddenly turning away, refusing to stand by our side. What does this mean for the future? Why is this Golden Dome so crucial to our survival, and why, at the same time, are the foundations of our alliances starting to crumble? Stick with me for the next few minutes, and I'll take you through a story that's about more than just politics, technology, or defense strategies. It's about the heart of what's happening in the world right now. It's about understanding the deep currents of change that are shaping our future, and how we must prepare ourselves for what's coming next. This is a moment of reckoning, one that could define the next generation. So let's dive in. Let's explore how we got here, and what the future holds for us, and for those we care about most. Imagine for a moment a future where the skies above us are not only a symbol of freedom, but also a shield, a golden dome of protection rising high, strong, and unyielding, standing guard over our land, our people, and our values. It's not just a vision, it's a promise. A promise that in a world of shifting alliances and rising dangers, we will not stand alone. This Golden Dome, a cutting-edge defense system, isn't just about intercepting missiles or shielding us from the unseen threats of the sky. No, it's more than that. It's about the very essence of who we are as a nation and what we stand for in this chaotic world. It's about standing firm in the face of adversity with unwavering strength and resolve. Now, let's pause and think about this for a second. Why do we need such a system? Why does the idea of the Golden Dome resonate with us, especially in these uncertain times? The answer lies in the times we're living in. We're witnessing a world where borders aren't just physical, they're ideological. The forces that threaten our freedom, our peace, and our future don't always come in the form of armies or tanks. Sometimes they come in the form of rising tensions, growing divisions, and the very real threat of cyber warfare, or long-range missiles aimed at our very way of life. The Golden Dome represents a proactive stand that says we will not be passive in the face of threats. We will rise, we will defend, and we will secure the future, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. This is a vision that goes beyond technology. It's about the heart of America, the spirit of innovation, and the courage to face the future with boldness and clarity. We're not just building a physical barrier, we're building a fortress of hope, security, and resilience. But here's where it gets interesting. As we look to build this new defense, we must ask ourselves, who will stand with us? Who will join us in this vision for a safer, more secure future? The truth is, this Golden Dome isn't something we can build alone. It's not just about the United States taking charge, it's about the world around us. We must ask, will our allies stand with us? Will they recognize the importance of what we're doing and choose to join in this monumental effort to protect not just ourselves, but the global order? It's a question that cuts deep because, as we know, not all of our closest allies are on the same page. In fact, some nations are already stepping back, hesitant to align with us, reluctant to accept the necessity of this bold new plan. But here's the thing, this is a call to action, not just for America, but for all those who value freedom, peace, and security in the face of growing threats. As we move forward, we'll explore how this vision is coming to life and what it means for our future and the future of the world. We'll also look at how the Golden Dome is more than just a physical structure. It's a symbol of our strength, our unity, and our resolve to stand firm against any threat, no matter where it comes from. So, As we begin to lay the groundwork for this vision, let's remember, the Golden Dome isn't just about protecting what we have. It's about ensuring that the America we pass down to our children is one that remains strong, safe, and secure no matter what the future holds. And in the next few moments, we'll explore why this vision is more important than ever, and how we, together, can make it a reality. Let's dive deeper into the next step of this journey, as we take a closer look at the rising global tensions and how the Golden Dome fits into this larger puzzle of protection and peace. Now, let's step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture. Because the Golden Dome doesn't rise in a vacuum, it rises in response to something. It rises in response to a world that feels like it's shifting beneath our feet. We are living in a time when global tensions aren't just headlines, they're undercurrents. You can feel them. You can sense them in the tone of leaders, in the breaking news alerts, in the alliances forming and the alliances fracturing. And in the middle of it all comes something called the Peace Council. On the surface, it sounds noble. Peace, cooperation, stability. But history teaches us something sobering. Sometimes what is called peace is not always peace. Sometimes it is positioning. Sometimes it is power rearranging itself under a softer name. Think about it. Nations that have long stood shoulder to shoulder with America are suddenly hesitant. Some decline invitations, others distance themselves. Meanwhile, unexpected players step forward, countries that not long ago were labeled rivals or adversaries. Russia, Middle Eastern powers, strategic players in shifting regions. And suddenly, the question isn't just who wants peace? The question becomes, what kind of peace? And under whose terms? The Bible speaks of a time when people will cry out peace and safety, and yet instability will follow. That doesn't mean we reject peace. It means we discern it. It means we understand that not every structure built in the name of harmony carries the same foundation. Here's the dilemma. The Peace Council represents an attempt to shape a new global alignment. But not everyone agrees on what that alignment should look like. European nations wrestle with their own priorities: security, economy, internal cohesion. Canada signals shifting interests. Others look toward emerging global powers. And America stands at a crossroads. Do we anchor ourselves to old frameworks? Do we build new ones? Or do we attempt to lead something entirely different? This isn't just geopolitics, it's a reordering. And whenever the world reorders itself, history shows us that tension increases before stability ever arrives. Let me put it in everyday terms. Imagine a neighborhood that's been stable for decades. Families know each other. There's trust, there's familiarity. Then suddenly, leadership changes. New rules are proposed. Some neighbors agree, others don't. New alliances form, old ones weaken. There's uncertainty in the air. That's what we're watching on a global scale. The Peace Council is more than a meeting table, it's a signal. A signal that the world is recalibrating its center of gravity. But here's where it becomes personal. Because when nations shift, people feel it. Markets react. Security concerns rise. Citizens wonder what tomorrow looks like. And in times like these, fear can become the loudest voice in the room. Yet Scripture reminds us that while kingdoms rise and fall, there is a kingdom that does not shake. While councils convene and dissolve, there is a counselor who does not change. That doesn't mean we ignore the signs of the time set. It means we interpret them with wisdom, not panic. The Peace Council dilemma isn't just about who joins and who refuses. It's about the deeper question of alignment. What values are guiding these decisions? What vision of the future is being formed? Is it rooted in short-term security, economic leverage, military balance, or something deeper? And for America, this becomes a defining moment. Because if the Golden Dome represents protection from external threats, then the Peace Council debate represents something else: the question of moral and strategic direction in a fractured world. And that's where we're headed next. Because to truly understand this tension, we have to zoom in closer. We have to look at one of the most surprising players in this unfolding story: Canada. A neighbor, a partner, a friend. And yet, suddenly, a nation at the center of a diplomatic crosscurrent. What does that tell us? And what does it reveal about the times we're living in? Let's lean into that together. Let's talk about Canada for a moment. not as a headline, not as a talking point, but as a neighbor, a friend, a nation that shares the longest undefended border in the world with the United States. Families stretch across that border. Economies intertwine. Our soldiers have stood side by side in wars. NORAD watches the skies together. For generations, there has been a quiet understanding between the two nations of partnership that didn't always need to be loud because it was steady. And that's why what we're witnessing now feels different. It feels like a shift. And whenever something long-standing begins to shift, it calls us to pause and reflect. Canada sits in a uniquely strategic position. Geographically, it stretches across the Arctic. It faces the North Atlantic. It touches the Pacific. It shares critical airspace and defense responsibilities with America. When we talk about missile defense, about early warning systems, about Arctic routes that could become the pathways of future conflict, Canada isn't peripheral, it's central. In many ways, Canada is the northern gate, and gates matter. In Scripture, gates represented authority, security, and influence. Whoever stood at the gate influenced the future of the city. So when rhetoric rises, when diplomatic tension increases, when alliances appear to cool, it's not just political theater. It has real implications. And here's the deeper question beneath the headlines. What direction will Canada choose in a world that is rapidly realigning itself? Will it lean more toward traditional Western alliances? Will it seek new economic partnerships elsewhere? Will it attempt to walk a middle path? And how will that decision affect the broader stability of North America? But let's bring this closer to home. Because this isn't about criticizing Canada, it's about reflection. America, too, must reflect. Partnerships are not sustained by assumption. They are sustained by shared values, shared trust, and shared vision. The relationship between the United States and Canada has historically been rooted in more than trade. It has been rooted in cultural kinship, freedom of speech, rule of law, Judeo-Christian foundations that shaped public life. When those foundations begin to drift even, subtly it affects the tone of everything else. We're living in a time when global powers are courting influence everywhere economically, technologically, militarily. Smaller shifts today can become major realignments tomorrow. And Canada, because of its geography and resources, because of its Arctic access and strategic positioning, is not a minor player. It is a hinge point. And hinge points determine how doors open or close. This is why the conversation about the Golden Dome and the Peace Council isn't abstract. It's interconnected. If the Golden Dome represents protection from external threats, then Canada's position represents the integrity of the Northern Shield. It represents whether North America stands unified or uncertain. And unity does not mean uniformity. It means shared conviction about what must be defended. Here's what strikes me most. Moments like this are rarely about one statement or one diplomatic decision. They're about direction. They're about trajectory. And trajectory determines destination. Proverbs says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Vision is not just for individuals, it's for nations. And when vision blurs, vulnerability increases. So perhaps this moment isn't only about policy, it's about identity. What does North America stand for in a century of rising global competition? What values are non-negotiable? What freedoms are worth preserving at all costs? Because once we answer that clearly, strategic alignment becomes clearer too. And this leads us directly into the broader question unfolding across the globe. Because Canada isn't the only nation reassessing its direction. Europe is wrestling. Asia is maneuvering. Middle Eastern powers are recalibrating. Alliances are being tested. And all of it points to something larger, a world moving toward a new configuration. So let's widen the lens now. Let's look beyond North America and ask, are we witnessing the early stages of a new world order taking shape? And if so, what does that mean for America, for our allies, and for the spiritual undercurrents moving beneath it all? There's a phrase that has echoed through history, at pivotal moments, a phrase that stirs both curiosity and concern. A new world order. It's been used in different eras, by different leaders, under different circumstances. But every time it surfaces, it signals one thing: transition. It signals that the old framework is straining and something new is trying to emerge. And right now, whether we like the phrase or not, we are watching a global transition unfold in real time. Alliances that once seemed unshakable are being tested. Economic partnerships are shifting eastward. Military strategies are recalibrating toward the Arctic, the Pacific, and cyberspace. Nations that were once clear adversaries are engaging in strategic cooperation. Countries that once stood firmly aligned are now hedging their bets. This isn't random, it's realignment. It's tectonic plates moving beneath the surface of global politics. Let me put it simply. For decades after World War II, there was a relatively clear structure to global power. The West anchored by America, NATO as a stabilizing force, clear lines of influence. But the 21st century has introduced new variables: technological dominance, cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, economic leverage through energy and rare minerals, control of supply chains. Power is no longer defined by geography alone, it's defined by networks, innovation, and influence. And here's where it becomes even more significant. China expands its global footprint through infrastructure investments and trade corridors. Russia asserts influence through energy and regional pressure. Middle Eastern powers diversify alliances beyond traditional Western ties. Europe wrestles with internal unity while navigating external threats. It's not chaos, but it is fluid. And fluid systems are unpredictable. Now, I want to say this carefully. Shifting alliances don't automatically mean catastrophe. Change in itself isn't evil. Nations adapt. Strategies evolve. But history shows us that when global systems shift, instability often precedes stability. The world doesn't move from one order to another smoothly. There are tremors. There are tensions. There are moments of uncertainty. And this is where we must be discerning. Because beneath geopolitical movement, there are spiritual undercurrents. Scripture speaks of kingdoms rising and falling. It speaks of seasons when power concentrates, when global systems converge, when governance becomes more centralized. It doesn't give us dates or headlines, but it gives us patterns. Patterns of consolidation, patterns of shifting authority, patterns of humanity seeking security through structure. And that brings us back to priorities. What are nations prioritizing right now? Security, energy, independence, technological superiority, economic resilience, military deterrence. Those priorities aren't surprising. But what's striking is how rapidly they're reshaping relationships. Countries are asking not just who are our friends, but who serves our interests. That subtle shift in question changes everything. Let me bring this down to the personal level. When someone feels uncertain about the future, they often start rearranging their priorities. They tighten financial plans, they rethink partnerships, they reposition themselves. That's what nations are doing. The question is, what happens when everyone repositions at the same time? That's when tension rises. We are witnessing a recalibration of global gravity. And America finds itself at a crossroads, not just reacting to change, but deciding whether to lead within it. The Golden Dome is one response. Strategic partnerships are another. But the deeper issue is vision. Because without a clear moral and spiritual vision, even the strongest alliances can drift. And as this new configuration forms, we begin to see something else emerging, Europe itself at a crossroads. Old alliances being questioned, defense budgets increasing, political rhetoric sharpening. Some nations stepping back from American-led initiatives, others quietly aligning. It's complex, it's layered, and it deserves careful attention. So next, we're going to zero in on Euro, specifically Spain's decision and what it reveals about the broader mindset shifting across the continent. Because when Europe recalibrates, it doesn't just affect Europe. It affects the entire Western world. Let's slow down for a moment and look closely at Spain. On the surface, it may seem like just another diplomatic decision, another nation declining participation in a new council. But sometimes a single decision reflects something much larger beneath it. Spain's refusal isn't just about one invitation. It may be a window into the changing mindset of Europe itself. Spain has deep history. Empires rose from its soil. Explorers once crossed oceans under its flag. Cathedrals stand there that are centuries old, reminders of a time when faith shaped culture and identity. And yet modern Europe is very different from the Europe of centuries past. Today, many European nations are navigating a delicate balance between national sovereignty, European Union cohesion, economic pressures, immigration challenges, and shifting defense policies. It's complex. It's layered. And Spain's response reflects that complexity. When Spain signals hesitation toward joining a U.S.-led initiative, it may not be hostility. It may be recalibration. European leaders are increasingly focused on strengthening independent defense capabilities, increasing domestic spending priorities, and avoiding entanglements that appear too closely aligned with one dominant power. In other words, Europe is seeking strategic autonomy. That's the phrase often used, strategic autonomy. The ability to stand on its own without over-reliance on Washington or anyone else. Now, that shift matters, because for decades, Europe leaned heavily on American military backing through NATO. American defense budgets stabilized the continent. But times are changing. Europe is reassessing its place in a multipolar world. It's increasing defense budgets. It's investing in its own security frameworks. And in doing so, it's signaling something subtle but important. The West is no longer monolithic. It's becoming diversified. Let me explain it this way. Imagine a family that has relied on one strong pillar for stability. Over time, the other members grow stronger and begin building their own pillars. That's not necessarily rebellion, it's maturity, but it does change the structure. The house feels different. The dynamics shift. And sometimes, when multiple pillars try to carry the weight differently, tension arises. Spain's refusal and similar hesitations across Europe may reflect that dynamic. Europe doesn't necessarily reject cooperation, but it wants balance. It wants voice. It wants agency. And here's where it becomes significant for America. If Europe begins to chart a more independent path, then American leadership must adapt. Influence cannot be assumed. It must be cultivated through trust and shared vision. There's also another layer here of values. Europe today is wrestling with identity questions, immigration pressures, cultural shifts, economic strain, secularization, security threats. These forces influence foreign policy decisions more than we often realize. A nation's external posture is often shaped by its internal pressures, and Europe is navigating profound internal change. Scripture tells us that when foundations shift, everything above them feels unstable. Psalm 11 asks, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? Now, that doesn't mean Europe's foundations are destroyed, but it does mean they are being tested. Tested by ideology, tested by economics, tested by security concerns. And when foundations are tested, leaders become cautious. They calculate differently. So Spain's refusal isn't isolated. It may signal a broader European recalculation about how closely to align with American strategic initiatives. And when Europe recalculates, the entire Western alliance structure adjusts. But this brings us to an even more strategic focal point, one that sits geographically between continents and symbolically between powers. Greenland, a quiet, icy land that most Americans rarely think about. And yet, suddenly, Greenland has become central to defense conversations, Arctic routes, rare minerals, and global positioning. Why? Because in times of shifting alliances, geography becomes destiny. And that's where we're headed, next toward the Arctic, toward Greenland, and toward understanding why this remote island may hold outsized significance in the emerging global equation. Now, let's turn our attention to something that might seem far off the island of Greenland. To many, it's just a vast, icy expanse on the map, a place we don't often think about. But I want to tell you that Greenland, despite its remote location, is becoming increasingly central to global discussions. In fact, it is emerging as one of the most strategically important places on Earth, especially for the United States. Why? Well, think about the position Greenland holds on the map. It sits right in the middle of the Arctic, between North America and Europe, and it acts as a key point in the North Atlantic. When we talk about the future of global defense, shipping routes, energy resources, and even climate change, Greenland is right at the crossroads. It is the gateway to the Arctica region that is growing in importance as the world's ice caps continue to melt, opening up new routes for shipping and potentially new sources of natural resources. The once frozen waters of the Arctic are slowly becoming the highways of tomorrow. And if you control the Arctic, you control so much more. Now, let's get practical. If the US wants to maintain its global influence and security, Greenland is a critical piece of the puzzle. Why? Because of its location, its resources, and its potential as a military foothold. Just think about it. Greenland sits in the perfect position to monitor not only potential threats coming from Russia, but also those from China, which has been increasing its presence in the Arctic as part of its global expansion. Control of Greenland, or at least a significant presence there, could dramatically shift the balance of power in the region and in the world. But it's not just about defense. Greenland also holds vast natural resources, including rare minerals, oil, and gas resources that will only become more valuable as global demand rises. And with climate change altering the landscape, more and more eyes are turning to the Arctic as a place of opportunity. The US has long been interested in these resources, but now, as other nations like China and Russia turn their attention to the region, the stakes are even higher. Now, some of you might be asking, why now? Why is Greenland suddenly so important? The answer is simple. Global power is shifting. The US, once the undisputed leader of the free world, now faces competition on multiple fronts. And in times like these, strategic positioning matters more than ever. The rise of China, the resurgence of Russia, and the shifting alliances across Europe all contribute to a world that is becoming more multipolar. And in this new global order, Greenland is not just an island, it's a pivot point, a key piece on the chessboard. But there's something deeper at work here, too. In times of great upheaval and change, nations look for strongholds. They seek places where they can secure their future, where they can defend their interests and protect their values. Greenland, in many ways, represents a new frontier, a place where the old world meets the new, a place where the US can stand firm against growing threats. And as we think about this, we must also consider the broader picture. Greenland is not just about military and economic control, it's about securing the future. It's about ensuring that the values we hold, dear freedom, security, opportunity, are protected in a world that is rapidly changing. Just as Israel was strategically placed in the ancient world to be a light to the nations, Greenland, in its own way, is strategically placed to help America continue to be a beacon of strength and hope in a world that feels increasingly divided. So as we consider the importance of Greenland, let's remember this. It's not just about what's happening today, it's about what's coming tomorrow. The world is shifting, alliances are changing, and Greenland is a symbol of the steps we must take to ensure our future security. But the question remains, will the US and its allies act quickly enough to secure this strategic position, or will they allow other powers to move in and reshape the landscape of tomorrow? As we look to the future, the next chapter is already being written, and Greenland may very well hold the key to how that story unfolds. So let's move forward together and see what lies ahead, because this is a moment that could change everything. Now, let's take a step back and look at how all of this fits into the larger framework of global alliances. Where does the US stand in the midst of these shifting dynamics? What role do we play as the world reorders itself? Let's continue the journey and explore these questions next. As we continue to reflect on the shifting tides of global power, let's circle back to something that is so much more than just technology, a system that symbolizes our readiness, our resolve, and our future. I'm talking about the Golden Dome. It's not just a defense system, friends. It's a vision. It's a promise that in an ever-changing world, we will stand firm, not just against external threats, but against uncertainty itself. Now, when we think of the Golden Dome, we often imagine a high-tech, sophisticated defense system capable of intercepting missiles, of protecting our skies and our borders. But let's dig deeper for a moment. The Golden Dome isn't just about intercepting projectiles or defending from above. It's about safeguarding everything that we hold dear. It's about protecting the freedoms that have been the foundation of this nation. It's about ensuring that the values we stand for, justice, liberty, and peace, continue to endure, no matter how the world around us changes. The Golden Dome is a reminder of something vital. That in times of uncertainty, in the face of rising global tensions, we are not helpless. We are not left vulnerable. We are not left at the mercy of outside forces. We have the strength, the resolve, and the ingenuity to protect ourselves, to protect our loved ones, and to defend the very future of this nation. But here's where it gets even more significant, because the Golden Dome isn't just about technology, it's about faith. It's about trust. Trust in the people who built it. Trust in the vision that led to its creation. And ultimately, trust in the idea that we can and will overcome any challenge that comes our way. Just as God provided a shield of protection for his people throughout history, this dome represents a modern-day shield away to secure the future, not just with weapons, but with hope. Now, let's talk about the deeper implications of the Golden Dome. When it was first proposed, some people saw it as just another project. But what it represents is so much bigger than that. It's about the message it sends. It's about showing the world that we are not just a nation that reacts to threats. We are a nation that plans ahead, that builds for the future, that anticipates challenges and rises to meet them. It's about building a defense system that stands not just as a physical barrier, but as a beacon of strength, a symbol of determination, and a testament to the unbreakable spirit of this country. And what's even more powerful is this. The Golden Dome is not only meant to protect the United States, it's meant to protect our allies. It's meant to be a global shield. Because when one nation stands strong, it has the power to help others stand strong as well. This dome isn't just for our borders, it's for the entire Western world. It's a commitment to our allies, to the nations that share our values, to those who stand with us in the fight for freedom, peace, and security. And in a world where threats are becoming more complex and unpredictable, this kind of solidarity is more important than ever. But here's the truth. None of this matters if we don't understand what it stands for. The Golden Dome is more than just a piece of technology. It's a statement of our faith in the future. It's a declaration that no matter how the world changes, no matter how the alliances shift, no matter how the forces of darkness seem to rise, we will not be moved. We will not be shaken. Our foundation is solid. Our commitment to justice, to freedom, and to peace is unyielding. And now, as we continue to look ahead, we must ask ourselves, how do we move forward from here? How do we ensure that this vision, the vision of the Golden Dome, not just a distant dream, but a reality? How do we take what we've built, what we've planned, and turn it into something that can stand the test of time? The answer lies not just in our technology, but in our faith. Our faith that we can and will protect the things that matter most. And with that faith, we'll keep moving forward together. So as we reflect on the significance of the Golden Dome, let's turn our attention to the bigger picture. How does this all fit into the global landscape? What role do we play in the shifting alliances and priorities around the world? Let's continue to explore what's coming next, because the story is far from over. Let's move forward into the next chapter of this journey. Now, as we stand at the crossroads of global change, it's time for us to ask a question that goes beyond politics, beyond strategy, beyond technology. What are we really fighting for? What is at stake in this moment of history? Because, my friends, when we talk about the Golden Dome, when we talk about shifting alliances and global power, we're not just discussing military defense or economic interests. We are talking about something far deeper. We are talking about the preservation of the values that have shaped this, nation values that have transcended borders, that have echoed through history, and that have inspired countless generations. At the heart of all of this is the question of what kind of world we want to live in. Do we want a world where freedom is a distant memory? A world where peace is a fleeting illusion, crushed under the weight of tyranny and oppression? Or do we want a world where justice, where liberty, where the inherent dignity of every human being is upheld where we stand, united against forces that seek to divide us, against ideologies that seek to erase the very principles that make us who we are? You see, the stakes are not just political, they are spiritual. The forces at work in the world today are not just vying for land or resource, they are vying for the soul of humanity. And the question is, what are we willing to stand for? What are we willing to protect? What are we willing to fight for? Scripture tells us that we are in a battle, not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. These are not just words, they are a reminder of the deeper battle taking place behind the scenes. And I'm not just talking about warfare in the traditional sense. I'm talking about the battle for truth, for morality, for the very principles that guide us as a nation. Because the truth is, when we forget what we stand for, when we lose sight of the values that made us great, we become vulnerable. We open the door for darkness to creep in, for fear to take root, for division to tear us apart. But here's the good news, friends. We don't have to fight this battle alone. Just as the Israelites in ancient times were surrounded by enemies, but God was their shield, so too can we be surrounded by threats, by uncertainty, by chaos, and still stand firm. Because the true strength of this nation doesn't lie in its military might alone. It lies in its people. It lies in the hearts of those who still believe in justice, in freedom, in truth, and in the power of faith to move mountains. So, as we look around at the shifting world, as we see alliances forming and breaking, as we see the rise of new powers and the changing of old orders, we must remember this. The battle we face is not just about power, it's about purpose. It's about preserving a future where the light of freedom continues to shine, where the oppressed are lifted up, where justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. And here's the challenge for us today. We must ask ourselves, what are we willing to do to preserve that future? Are we willing to fight for the next generation? Are we willing to stand in the face of rising darkness and say, we will not yield, we will not bow down, we will not be silent? The Golden Dome is a powerful symbol, yes, but the real strength lies in what it represents. It's not just about defense systems or military might. It's about the defense of our values. It's about standing firm in the knowledge that we are fighting for something greater than ourselves. We're fighting for a future where freedom, justice, and peace are not just ideals, but realities that we live by every single day. And as we move forward, we must keep our eyes on that higher calling, that greater purpose. We are not simply defending a piece of land or a system of government. We are defending a way of life that has been shaped by the hand of providence, a way of life that still holds the promise of hope for the world. As we continue this journey, let us keep this truth at the forefront of our minds. The battle we face today is not just about survival, it's about purpose. And with that purpose, we have the strength to overcome any obstacle, to face any challenge, and to emerge victorious. So, let's move forward with this in mind, knowing that we are not just fighting for the here and now, we are fighting for a future where the light of freedom continues to shine brightly for all to see. And in the next step of our journey, we'll take a closer look at the bigger picture of global alliances and how our choices today will shape the world tomorrow. Let's keep walking forward together. As we stand on the brink of this global reckoning, the question that looms before us is not just what the future holds, but who will shape it. The Peace Council, a creation of diplomatic ambition, is a symbol of this momentum that represents the shifting tides of global power. But as we look ahead, we have to ask ourselves, what is the true purpose of this council? And where will it lead us in the long run? In the past, peace was often defined by the power of a single superpower or a series of dominant nations. But today, we're seeing the emergence of a more fragmented world. The Peace Council, in its current form, is a reflection of this fragmentation. On the surface, it may look like a noble effort countries coming together to create a peaceful order, to find common ground amidst global chaos. But as we dig deeper, we must recognize that what we're witnessing is a recalibration of how nations view power, how they define security, and ultimately, how they understand their place in this new world order. Now, let's pause for a moment and think about this. The Peace Council may be called by many to serve the cause of peace. But what happens when the Council's members have conflicting visions of what peace actually means? When the priorities of the powerful don't align with the needs of the marginalized, when one nation's definition of peace threatens another's sense of sovereignty, what then? What happens when global diplomacy becomes more about influence and less about unity? The truth is, we are witnessing a moment in history where global power is being redefined. Nations are no longer bound by the same ideological or economic frameworks that shaped the 20th century. Alliances are shifting, and new players are stepping onto the world stage. China, Russia, the Middle East all are asserting themselves in ways we haven't seen before. And in this new world order, the United States, once the dominant force of the past century, is faced with the challenge of maintaining its leadership in a world that is moving in multiple directions at once. But here's the important question. What will America's role be in this new world? Will we cling to the past, hoping that old alliances and power structures will somehow hold, or will we rise to the challenge? Recognizing that the future requires a new kind of leadership one that balances strength with humility, influence with integrity, and security with freedom. As we look toward the future of the Peace Council, we have to ask ourselves how we can be a part of shaping it, not just as a nation, but as a people. It's not enough to just be passive observers in this global drama. We are called to be active participants, to speak with conviction, to act with courage, and to lead with wisdom. This is a moment of opportunity, not just for America, but for all those who cherish freedom, justice, and peace. And as we consider the path forward, we must remember that global peace is not simply the absence of conflict, it is the presence of righteousness. It is the recognition of human dignity. It is the willingness to stand up for what is good, true, and just, even when it is difficult. That is the kind of peace we must seek, and it starts with us. It starts with our choices, our actions, and our commitment to the values that have always defined us. As we move forward, let us remember this: the future of the Peace Council and the future of global power will be shaped by the decisions we make today. Will we settle for a peace built on compromise and convenience, or will we work toward a peace built on truth and righteousness? That is the question we must answer. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore how our choices today, as individuals and as nations, will determine whether we emerge from this global reckoning stronger or weaker, more united or more divided. But for now, let us reflect on this pivotal moment in history and ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to leave behind? And what kind of leaders will we choose to be in this new era? The answer is up to us. Let's move forward together and shape the future with wisdom, strength, and grace. As we come to the close of our time together today, I want to leave you with a simple yet powerful message that cuts to the heart of everything we've discussed. The world is changing. The winds of global power are shifting. Alliances are being tested. But in the midst of it all, there is one thing that remains unshakable: our faith and our commitment to truth. In times of uncertainty, in moments when the world around us seems to be unraveling, we must stand firm. We must stand firm not just in our ideals, but in our faith. For our faith is the foundation upon which everything else is built. It is the cornerstone that holds us steady when everything else feels like it's in motion. And we stand firm in truth that doesn't bend with the winds of political expediency, truth that doesn't shift with the tides of popular opinion, but truth that is eternal, unwavering, and rooted in the values that have shaped this nation. You see, as the global landscape shifts, as nations realign themselves, it is easy to feel overwhelmed. The noise can be deafening. The divisions seem insurmountable. But in these moments, we must remember, we are not called to follow the crowd. We are called to be a light in the darkness, to stand firm in what is right, and to walk in faith and truth, no matter how great the challenge. We are called to be the ones who hold the line, who refuse to compromise on the things that matter most: freedom, justice, and the unshakable conviction that we are each created in the image of God. And this isn't just a call for nations. It's a call for each of us. We must be the ones who stand firm in our communities, in our homes, in our workplaces, and in the world. When we see the darkness rising, we must be the ones who rise higher. When we see fear creeping in, we must be the ones who walk in courage. When the truth is under attack, we must be the ones who defend it with our words, our actions, and our lives. So today, I invite you to make that stand. Stand firm in your faith. Stand firm in the truth. Stand firm in the belief that no matter how dark the world may seem, the light we carry is greater. It is a light that cannot be extinguished by the shifting sands of time or the winds of change. It is a light that shines brighter with every trial, with every challenge, and with every step we take in faith. As we move forward, let's remember, the world may change, but the truth of who we are and the foundation of our faith will always remain. And as we stand firm in that truth, we will continue to be the beacon of hope that the world so desperately needs. So, my friends, let us walk forward with strength, with courage, and with unwavering faith in the truth. Let us be the generation that stands firm, not just in the face of global change, but in the face of any challenge, knowing that our foundation is secure. And as we stand firm, we will continue to shape the world, not by following the winds of change, but by standing on the unchanging truth that has always guided us. Let's move forward together.